So yeah, let me start. So yeah, welcome everyone. This is day two. We are having the introduction to AWS Identity and Access Management. And so like any other session, let me just put a disclaimer. All the opinion expressed in this session, which is being recorded, is solely mine and has nothing to do with my employer. So thank you there. So remember in last session, what we did is we have created a root account. I'm wondering how many of you able to complete the creating the root account, or means completing the AWS account. You know, just kind of post in chat. So this way I get to know, okay, you're already there. Perfect. So what I'm gonna do here is, you know, we'll walk through. In today's session, I will try to do as much as demo, or at least walk you through the console. So this way, you know, if you're not able to create your AWS account, so and when you're able to do that, you have an idea. You know, you can just go through this video and have your complete this demo yourself or the lab yourself. So first thing, like you have to go to AWS Amazon.com console. You are signed into the console. You're clicking here, and remember I told you in our last session. Usually, when you create very first time, the account which you create, we call it root user account, where you provide all your credit card information and everything. So in Amazon, the billing is happened against the account which is created by root user and the account which you're creating. So when in Amazon, all the billing is happening around that particular AWS account. Okay. So when you first log in, what happened is you use logging through that root user. And as I said, like root user are going to have all the access around your AWS resources, billing. So this is very, very critical account. So what you want to do is, like, once you have that, the root account has been created, you're going into your AWS console, right? Here I'm just going into AWS console, and the next step will be creating a user for within my accounts. So we can do that later, but before once we are in console, let me walk you through in console what all things in there. So very important thing around console is it come with, especially the person who's started learning the AWS, it's come with lot of really nice tutorial, and I will highly recommend for you guys. Most of them is around, means it's around free tier. And what is free tier is what Amazon Web Services do is, when you first create an account, it will provide you, it provide a lot of resources with with access limit, which is valid till year. So you can go and look all the services which is there in free tier and what's their limit. But I think in order to complete a lot of examples or learning AWS, uh, you have not to pay a lot. I mean, you have to pay around a couple of services, maybe RDS or something, or I believe there are some services come there free as well. I know around Redshift there's a two node cluster comes as a free Redshift. So there's a lot of services which is available under the free tier. If it's not, then it will tell you, okay, this is not available under the free tier. So just go through all this, tutorial which is there, and just try to learn as much as you can from there. So let me quickly walk you through what all things are there in AWS console. First thing is definitely around the services, what all services which is available. You can go and look around all the services. There are multiple sections, and within the section we have all the services put together. So we have a compute. Under compute, we are having EC2, which is Elastic Cloud Compute. And when we working on that on our session, we'll emphasize on EC2. EC2 is nothing but it's just a virtual machine for you guys. And there are many other services which I'm going to cover when we are covering that compute section, maybe around Lambda, EC2, which is kind of important. Then we have a storage. In storage, we are definitely going to cover S3, which is kind of a backbone of means I would say, like, it's one of the most critical service, and you always heard about S3 all the time, because this is where you're storing all the data, or if you're building a data lake, this is where you're building your data lake, etc. And then we have a databases. In databases, we are having RDS. RDS is nothing but relational database services, and Amazon has its own relational database services. We call it Aurora, which comes into two different open source flavor. One is Postgres, one is MySQL. And if you see, right, there's almost around 170 plus services. So you have to good on all the services. When you start, just concentrate around a couple of services, especially around IAM. So you should knowing how IAM work and how access and everything is being granted. But again, it's altogether a different domain. Let's say if you're a security engineer, or if you are a DevOps engineer, you want to put a lot of effort there. And if you're really interested in DevOps and security, it's altogether a new career. And I believe there's a lot of job opening around DevOps people and security engineer within Amazon and outside of Amazon. So there's a lot of resources available. And one more thing, guys, when you start learning around Amazon, the best resource is just do watch reInvent videos. And I believe the reInvent videos are one of the best resource for you to start learning. And thereafter, there's a lot of AWS build videos as well, which help you there. And I showed you, like, there's a tons of videos available here. So if you click here, it will show you a lot. And then if you click here, it will show you there's a lot of tutorial available. So just start digging around it based on your interest, where you wanted to do that. And start with the 100 level if you're fairly new, and then move to 200 level, and then go to 300 level. Just do not start with the 300 level in very first place, or you feel intimidated. Okay. So yeah, what we did is, and let's say if you're working on some of those services, it will show you here. But if you are accessing some services very frequently, you can go and pin those services. So actually, you can pin those services from here. Yeah, click here and just be able to pin those services to this place. So this way, if you are accessing any services, for in our case, we are going to access IAM very frequently, S3 very frequently. So we are going to put those here. So this way, we have not to go again and again on services for those two to access. Where is IAM? Here you go. The other tricks around working with AWS is, like, okay, when you click on this AWS console, it will let you to open a new tab. Okay, and when you're opening a new tab, you are logging into a different console.
Hello.
I'm sorry, someone is having some question here. Anyways, so this is like where you can tag, and resource group, you can create a multiple resource group and have services added to it. And this is where, like, you get all those account information about your account. So when you click here, it will take you that account. It will provide you the account number, etc. You will have it there. So you will able to see the account number, address, contact information, etc. And yep, my billing dashboard, when you click here, it will tell you, like, when you wanted to, like, how much you have been charged, etc. And you can click on Cost Explorer. It will go deep. You can work on saving plans, something launched new, like if you're I think it's not important for you guys to know this around saving plan. It's more for the enterprise when they're using a lot of services around AWS. And yeah, so here you can go and billing preference, you can do that. There's one more thing I wanted to show you here. You can create a budget, right? You wanted to tell, okay, how much I wanted to spend, how much, what will be the budget, everything. So you can create here the budget part too. And so let's move to our topic of today, which is IAM, right? So as I said, when we first log into AWS, what we log into is we are logging as a root user. But in production or any other environment, you do not want it to log into as a as a root user. So what you will do is you have to go to IAM and you have to create your first user. And this is where let me walk you through that console first. So when you go to the IAM services, you're able to see there are multiple things like group, users, role, policies, identity provided, account setting, and there's a lot other, right? So the idea is, if you want to complete this step, but we are not completing this step for now, just leaving, this step, but you can create, you can have this step completed. So this way you are kind of securing your IAM root access. So this way it deleting the root account, it creating multi-factor accounts, creating an individual user, which we are going to create now, and then assigning to a group, which we're going to do now, and then have the IAM password policy applied to it. There's one more thing is like, okay, it comes with this is your sign-in URL, which you can share with with other users if you're creating their user group, or it will come with the user as well. You can customize this one as well. So let's say if you want to have something like AWS learning session, we can have it customized. So this way, when I'm clicking on this one, I'm going instead of showing my account number, I'm having this customized URL for me. So let's go one by one what all these options are there, right? So first of all, let's group. Group is nothing but is a logical unit, right, where you can group together a set of user within IAM. So let's say what I'm doing is first I'm creating a admin group, and what I'm doing to this admin group is I wanted to attach a policy, and do not worry about policy for now. And so what I wanted to do is for admin, I wanted to give an administrator access. So I just selected this administrator access. I went ahead. Oh, I created a group, right? So we're done with the creating group. So if you see here, right, there's a 0 user associated to it, and so we have not to worry about this one. But if you go here, you see there is something called managed policy, and we're going to learn what is managed policy is. But under the managed policy, it's showing, okay, it having the administrator access. And there's an inline policy, something I don't see there is an inline policy is being created. We'll talk about that. What is inline policy later part of our presentation. Okay. So what I'm doing is first step is, okay, I have created a group where I wanted to put all my admin user, right? So in my case, I wanted to create an admin user, learning admin. I have created this admin user. You can create as many as admin user. So there is two way of admin user log into my AWS. One is through programmatic access. Other one is through console. So I'm enabling both. I will show you like how you can get to the programmatic, means through the CLI SDKs, and how you can get through the console. So let's have a custom password. for now is we are giving welcome 123 and just keeping it very simple. And I just do not want to do, I'm just not letting my user to recreate the password once they logged into it. If you want, you can just have this one checked, okay? Go to the permission. So there is a couple of options which is available for you. One is either you are attaching to a group. I have already created a group, so I have attached to the admin group. The other one is, okay, if you do not want it to have a group, you can directly go ahead and attach the policy to it. And remember, I have attached this administrator access policy. We'll talk about our policy later, but just for your knowledge, so I have attached this one. Right now, what I'm doing is, or this is kind of a nice to have, is to have a group created and user assigned to your group. So this way, you have not to worry about managing access on the user end. So what you're doing is you're managing access on a group level. So you're not managing access on a user level. So let's say if you have a 100 of user and added to this particular group, so you just kind of and wanted to have some kind of access to your AWS resources, so you're granting access to your group. So this way uh, it make your job less complicated around security. The other part is tagging. So lot many people do not do tagging, and even sometimes let me, there are a couple of people are waiting, so let me admit that person. So here is what usually tagging do is when you generate a report, or even IAM also allow you to have an access management through tag. And when you're doing a budgeting, or when you're generating a report around your AWS services, right? That's where the tag comes into handy, because this way you're knowing, okay, what all so let's say I have a multiple accounts, right? Multiple user accessing my same account, and I have something around dev, I have something around prod, I have something around test. So what I can say here is, let's say environment, this is prod, right? So, and business unit, HR. So this way, what I'm telling is, so when I'm generating, or when I'm generating that billing report, I'm knowing, okay, uh, HR, what all resources is being used by HR. So this, it makes your job easy, as well as it will help you to do an access management as well, because you can do an access management through tagging. So right now I'm just not doing any tagging here, but that's the advantage of having tagging. And when you work on a production accounts, usually they recommend you to have it tagged, but not for a demo, or maybe then when you're working on the test or dev account. But it's a best practice to have tagging. What we did is we reviewed it. Here is AWS Learning Admin as a user. I'm just pasting here on a chat, so it will be handy to me. And I have created this user. So and keep in mind, so now user is being created. So let's just go and explore this one. And before that, just download this CSV. And it is very critical for you to have this CSV saved in a very secure location. And also, you do not you wanted to rotate this access ID and secret key ID. That's kind of best practices. The reason being, with this access key and security key ID, I'm able to access your AWS account, you know, probably like if I'm using some kind of CLI, if I'm using some kind of SDKs, it will allow me to do that. So yep, now we have a user being created. You can send an email to their credentials. Awesome. So the next step is, now you have a user being created. What do you want to do next? Is go to log out from your root account and start working with your admin user, right? So what I'm doing is I will be opening a new console, and I'm going to log into this user. What was the username? AWS Learning Admin, and the password was welcome. So just keep in mind, this IAM is an eventual consistent. What does it mean? It means try to replicate that IAM into multiple data centers. So sometime when you first, after creating the login, it right away do not apply your permissions. So sometime you have to wait for it. Why? Anyways, so let me go back and see what was the password. This is what I have given earlier as well, right? Anyways,
Yeah.
So anyways, you can change the password here. You can go to console password and you can do a password management through console, and new window. Hopefully it will get into it. Yep. So sometime it will take time to get replicated, right? So that's the best practices. You do not want it to start using your root account, and usually, the best practice is delete your root account and have other account being created. And again, you wanted to also save your access, here. So first, this is what we did, right? But every time you do not want it to grant an access to your user through console, right? I can't just grant access to the user to the console. So we have something called SSO, which also we integrated with IAM, and then when you're creating the IAM policy, it will be navigating you to the group, means all the services which you have an access to. But other way is around is like, okay, you can, let's say if you wanted to access all those AWS services through CLI, right? How I can configure the CLI in AWS is, uh, let me open a terminal. So the option is, there is something called AWS configure. And when you click AWS configure, I have a multiple, profile has been added. So there's an option called profile. Just provide the profile name as AWS Learning. And here it will ask you to provide that AWS access key, right? So let me quickly open the document and have that access key accessible to me. I'm not sharing it because it's critical. So I will just paste here. Sorry, that's the problem working with multiple screen. Access key, and this is my secret key. There are a couple more people. Admit everyone. The reason name is you just want to put, so let's say US West 2. And remember we talked about multiple reasons in AWS. And let's say what will be the file format you want it to be an output. Just putting it JSON. You can just keep it as a null as well. So done, right? So let's say I'm running AWS S3 help. Let's see. Anyways, it's a CLI, right? So CLI is command line interface. So I'm accessing everything through CLI. So this way, it will be easy for you to not to go console and poke around console just to see something. But and if you wanted to do and a lot of work, and the CLI is a nice option to know. So let's see AWS S3 ls. This is command to list all those bucket, right? And so we do not have any bucket anyways. Let's see. File was, what was the profile? I think this is the profile which I have created. No. So let's see. Let's see. So this is the only bucket which I see here, right? The connect bucket, which comes with the default. So, and when I run that command against, when I run the CLI command, it's showing that it's only bucket. Let's create a bucket here, and we'll see, okay, if we're able to see those things here. And I do not want to cover the storage part here, but bucket name should be unique to global. So you cannot have a two bucket name similar across the globe. I'm just not talking around your AWS account. I'm just your AWS organization. I'm talking about around across globe. So let's say AWS running demo, IAM demo, right? So I have created this bucket. I have not granted any public access. So all my bucket is not public, and you do not want it to have your bucket public. So that's the first thing ever. Do not keep your bucket public. You will get a lot of nasty email from your security guys if you're keeping your bucket public. So let's see. Okay, so see, are you able to see your bucket here? Okay, so that's the first thing you wanted to do. It's like, okay, you wanted to go to IAM, create an admin account, and create a group, create a user within a group, and you can grant an access there. So what we did is we have created an admin, right? But I do not want it to have an admin account. It means I wanted to have a multiple other groups as well. So what we're going to do is we are creating other groups, and here is dev, and I'm not assigning any policies to it. I'm just creating a group, and I just created a group with no policy assigned to it. I went ahead and AWS read only user. So I went ahead and created this user as a read only. And again, I'm just giving him console access. I'm not giving him anything different. So I just do not want him to be accessed through CLI. So what I did is like, welcome 123, fine, done. Next permission, added to dev. You already went through this thing, so you're good. Review it, create user. User being created, right? Awesome. So now we have a read-only user and with no permission attached to it. Let's see how this user behave when you are creating a read-only user, without any permission being added. So what we're gonna do? So let's let's go to this user and have a credential copied. So this is console thing. Let me open a new cognito window. What happened here? Okay. I have logged in here. AWS read only. Come on. This is example of eventual consistency in IAM. And I have seen many times, like, if I'm creating very first time, it takes time. And if I go ahead and where I was, so if I go ahead and just change the password here, right? It get replicated very fast, and I have still to find out why. Maybe I have to check with one of my colleague to see why this is happening. So let's go ahead and open a new window. Meanwhile, guys, I will take a pause and let you guys ask any question after this login complete. Perfect. So we're done with this logging. Just let me take a pause and kind of open a floor. Do you guys have any questions?
Hey, Navneet, it's Manik. Why did we create that bucket?
Just to test, okay, if our AWS CLI is working fine. The one which, when I have run the very first time, it was showing the default bucket. So I wanted to ensure, okay, when I'm programmatically accessing my AWS account, I should able to see all the bucket which I'm created. So that's the reason I have created that particular bucket for you to just showcase, like, okay, how this works.
Got it. So by default, is it like, and I might be wrong, so all these users that we are creating reside in a bucket, in an S3 bucket, and that's why we have to create one to programmatically validate that through a CLI?
No, actually all the users reside under the IAM. So what I'm doing here is I have created, right, I have to access what all resources are there in my AWS through CLI, right? CLI is nothing as a command line interface. So I just do not want it to go and, every time logged into my console and go to the services, look for all this bucket. I just wanted to list my bucket, what all buckets are there in my AWS account. So that's the reason I have configured this profile, which provide after providing this access and secret key. And so this way, it enabling me to run a command prompt, which is on my local to my Mac, right? And able to access this AWS console and able to list. So this command is just to listing what all things are available within S3. So it has nothing to do with IAM user.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there a way to batch upload users?
There is a way to batch upload users. So means if you're doing an SSO, right, there's a federated query is there. You can do that as well. I think you can import multiple user through API, but I have to cross check that part. I have not did personally, so I am not very sure on that part how you can do that. But I know you can do that mass import of users. You can do that. But eventually, see, most of the enterprise, they do not go with having this user being created, because most of the enterprise, they already have their already they are using some kind of a AD or SAML or anything, right? So they just integrate this thing, and it will allow you to integrate. There's a service called SSO, which is Amazon Single Sign-On, and this is where you can configure with multiple user. I don't think, okay. Just do not derail to that one. We'll talk on that front later. But
okay,
answer to your question, yes, you can do that. Okay.
Okay.
And
thanks,
maybe I can able to I can do a follow up and able to provide how you can do that. I have to just go through the document.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So remember we logged into. Any further questions, or shall I move ahead? Perfect. So what I will do is, remember I have created a read-only user and without assigning any policy to it. And what does it mean? Means I'm able to get into this AWS console, but if I go to the services, right? Let's say if I wanted to access S3 bucket, where is S3? So just type S3, and if I, let's see if I'm able to see that S3. Remember we have created two S3 bucket. So if you're going into here, it's telling you you do not have an access, like this S3 list bucket policy. So what does it mean? It means like when you create a user to AWS, by default it do not have any access. You have to assign, you have to grant an access, and this is where that policy comes into picture. Okay, how you wanted to assign an access to your user. Well, let me go three. Let me see if I have covered. Yeah, one very important thing I forgot to mention about IAM is, what is IAM, right? Okay, so IAM is nothing but it's a web console, means web service within Amazon, which allow you to authorize and means authenticate and authorize your users and to use your resources. So there is a two very important and critical terms to understand here is authentication and authorization. Authentication is like when I'm providing my credentials and going into my AWS console. That's kind of authentication. Authorization is what I'm able to perform once I'm get into that console. Remember when I'm working on that root user. Uh, where is Yep. Just one second. Yeah. So when I'm working with read-only users, so what I did is I have created an IAM user, and I'm able to authenticate to that user. Okay, this is the valid IAM user by providing my IAM user ID and password. But when I try to access this S3 bucket, what I did is I'm doing the authorization part of it, whether that particular user is authorized to have an access to your S3 bucket. Am I making sense here? Because this is very, very critical point to understand when you work with IAM. IAM do nothing, it's just do authentication and authorization. And then we have to go deep, okay, how you can do an authenticate. You can authenticate, via console, you can authenticate via CLI. uh, Remember, I showed you how you can authenticate by using a CLI. So if you're using something like, maybe you're using some SDK like Visual Studio, you can have a Visual Studio being created, and then here you are providing your credentials to it, and able to access. So let's say these are the credentials, you're able to access it. A lot of profiles available. So that's what I meant earlier. Okay, is about authorization. But once I'm authorized to access, it does not. Sorry, once I authenticate to the IAM, it does not mean I'm authorized to do everything. Authorization comes after the authentication. So here, as a read-only user, I'm not able to access any services. Let's try some more services and see if I'm able to access those services. EC2, nope. Right. Let's try to. EC2 is just to a virtual machine. So if I try to launch anything, I will definitely get an error here. So because I do not have anything attached to my user. So what next, right? This is where you start. But before that, let's quickly go back to our. Yep. Yeah. So let's quickly talk around the IAM features. So what I am able to do is remember I talked about authorization and authentication. Within authorization and authentication, you can do a lot of stuff. One is you can shared access to your AWS account. What does it mean? It means like you're creating a multiple AWS users within your account, and then you're literally you're sharing your AWS account. Then you have a granular permission. What does it mean? Like granular permission is, okay, you have a user can have an access to some S3 bucket. Within some S3 bucket you have some S3 files, some files. So user means you can go as granular as you want with IAM. It will allow you to securely run application on EC2. It means like when you're creating when you're installing any application on EC2, if you're assigning IAM policies to it, it will allow you to run. Also, it will enable you to do the multi-factor authentication. It's a kind of self-exclamatory. It will allow you to do the identity federation. This is what I was talking about earlier, doing a single SSO or integrating with your own account, your own Active Directory. So let's say you work for organization XYZ, right? You already have a user ID being created with your account. Let's say user ABC work with at the rate of xyz.com, right? So which you use in order to get into your company VPN, or maybe all working within your company Salesforce or etc. is kind of your company credential. So you can federate that one with AWS. So when you log in into AWS, it will ask you to provide your company credential. Identity information for assurance. All the IAM activity being logged into CloudWatch and CloudTrail, so you're able to track from there what all things happening. So if you're making any IAM call, sorry, if you're making an API call, it gets logged into CloudTrail. If you're doing any services actions, it gets logged into CloudWatch. Integrated with many services, which is kind of a very self-explanatory and then eventually consistent. This which I have shown you, like, okay, IAM, what we try to do is like, in order to maintain high availability, it replicate those credentials to multiple data centers. So that's the reason sometimes when you're making and changing with your IAM policies, it not get replicated right away. So that's the reason you do not want it to have a policy change within some kind of application, right? So this way means the application has to wait for it to get it done. Yeah, so this is very interesting slide, how IAM works, right? So remember I talked about IAM do an authentication and authorization. So when you as a user logged into, what we did is we have a user logged into, we can create a role as well. We can talk about role in next couple of minutes, but you can have a role login, or you're logging through an application like through the CLI and etc. Or you are having the federated, like, okay, you have a you're logging through your company website, or sorry, company credentials, or you're logging through Facebook, you're logging through Amazon credentials or Gmail credential, etc. You're creating and having the authentication. Once you are there, that's where things get interesting. This is where you have to define policies, and there are multiple policies. One is your identity-based policies, which is on your user. Other one is your resource-based policy, which is on your resource. Resources are like EC2, S3, and there's 170 plus resources. So once you're creating the policies against those resources, you can have that policy. Just keep in mind, not all resource allow you to have, means not all resource have the resource-based policy available for it. S3 is there, so you can have S3 resource-based policy. Identity is against your user, and then we have something called inline policy, which is very specific to that particular user. We'll talk on that one. Once you're done and having that policy assigned, right, you can access through CLI. Means either you can access the services, or you can remember I was able to access S3 by using CLI. So that was it mean here. And then also you can have a, one resource can access another resource by using policy. Let's say I have a data sits in, I have some file sit into S3, and S3 is nothing but in storage, right? So you're already knowing so far. And I wanted to I wanted to copy the data from S3 to, let's say, Redshift. Redshift is nothing, is a data warehouse solution in AWS. So what you're doing is like you're assigning a IAM policy to your Redshift, which going to your S3 and loading your data. Guys, feel free to interrupt me if you feel like, okay, you're getting lost, because I know I'm mentioning a lot of terms and lot of concept. I'm introducing a lot of concept, and it's not easy, because it will take some time for you to grasp everything and have an understanding around it. But just feel free to interrupt me in between if you feel like, okay, you want to have more clarification around some topic, okay, which I have mentioned. Okay, so remember, if you see this diagram, there is a one user account which having everything, around this account. What if I have a different account? How my different account able to access the resources from different AWS account? So definitely you can create a resource based or identity based access management, allow you to access your resources from different account. Okay. I think I have already covered this part, user and user group. Let's talk about IAM role. What is role? Role is nothing but, uh, let me define in a layman language. You are a user, right? Let's say you are a developer in your organization. What all things you able to do, what all able services you able to access, or, usually, and everything is assigned to a specific role. What role you able to perform, and within a role you're assigning policies. Policy is nothing but a access document where I'm telling, hello Mr. Developer, you're only allow, why I'm not able to admit him anyways. So what I'm telling, hello Mr. Developer, you only able to access to this S3 bucket, right? And what I did is I have defined a policy. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a role, let's say read-only role. And what I'm doing is I'm assigning that read-only role to an user. So I'm doing little bit kind of making my job easy. So let's say I have a 100 of users in my AWS account, right? And every user have like set of user have a same kind of a requirement, and other set of user have the same kind of requirement. So what I did is I wrote a policy, and instead of going and assigning that policy to every individual user, what I did is I have created a role, right? And assigning that role to particular user, or maybe a particular services. So let's say if one service wanted to access another service, so I went ahead and created a role and assigned that role to that particular service. So when your user when your user go and use or run that service, it assumes that particular role and run it for you. So you're not running as an user, you are running as a role. How I can make this little easy for you to understand. Let me give you an example around Redshift, right? Redshift is a data warehouse. And in a data warehouse, we all know, right? We have to insert the data into our tables. So let's say if we have 100 users working with the Redshift, if I have to, and every user have a requirement to copy the data or insert the data into your Redshift, right? If I have to go with the granting access of the what we did around assigning the policy, it's going to be difficult because now what I'm doing is I'm going ahead and granting access to all those 100 users to have it. What if I just create a role where I can tell, okay, Redshift, you have an access to S3. Just go ahead and perform that copy operation for me. So this way, when as an user A, when I logged into Redshift and when I'm running that copy command, what I'm doing is I'm evoking a role which is assigned to your Redshift cluster. And remember, when we start working on analytics part, it makes more clear to you. But just just for your understanding, I'm giving this example. So what I'm telling is like, okay, Redshift as a service, go and get the data from S3 instead of as a user. And policy is nothing, just it's a kind of is a document which allow you to define permissions around resources or identity. Any question, guys? Okay, fair enough. So remember we talked about IAM policies. So policies let you to perform the authorization, and it has a two-part. One is specification, other one is enforcement. The specification is like, okay, you're defining a policy, which usually DevOps do, right? Or maybe your security engineer do. It go and create a policy and what we're going to do here. And the enforcement is going to get by AWS. AWS see, okay, the policy which is created and assigned to this particular user, whether that user is able to perform the task. It's more kind of in, enforcing that policy to your user. When you create a policy, it comes with a principal, action, resource, and condition. Principal is nothing but your user, and the action is like in AWS. It's very easy, right? You have only two actions. One is allow, other one is deny. And this is one. This is an interview question as well. Most of the time, when you kind of going for interview, usually people ask you, if I have an allow access to this particular resource, and then I'm giving a deny to that particular resource, which one will be take a precedence? Any guess? Anyways, always deny take a precedence. Yeah, I got an answer. Thank you, guys. So deny always take a precedence on allow. So that's awesome. So I talked about type of policy, which we are having the managed policy. What is managed policy? In a layman language is like, okay, all the policy means predefined policy is being created by AWS itself. For instance, remember I showed you the policy is being created for granting an admin access, or having S3 read-only access, which I will show you in a demo part, or the custom managed policies like POS policy is being you're defining. Let's say you're defining a user XYZ only able to access bucket ABC, or only able to access couple of buckets or maybe couple of objects within a bucket. So you're creating your own policy which allow you to do that. And that's one kind of managed policy. And let's say you have a very user specific policy, right? You have created a read only permission and granted to 10 user, but within 10 user there's a one user. For that you wanted to have more granular access. Let's say there is a folder called HR, right? And within HR folder there are something around paycheck and paycheck details. So you do not wanted to have an access. You wanted to deny an access to that particular paycheck file to particular user. So you can go ahead and create inline policy for that particular user, having explicitly denying access to that uh, particular file. And as I said, as deny take a precedence, that particular user won't able to access that file. Okay, yeah, I think in the demo part, this is what I was about to show you. We have created user, we have created a CLI, created a group. Let's go back to our, okay. Okay, so we are here. We have created this read-only user. What we're gonna do here, right? So let's first learn, okay, how to assign a manage policy. So when you click here on add permission, it will take you, it will ask you whether you wanted to add to that user into some kind of a group or wanted to, have some kind of existing permission applied to it. Remember, we have created admin permission, so you do not want to do that. What we wanted to do is like, okay, we wanted to assign a predefined policy. So if you see here, right, all these policies is predefined, and usually let's go and create S3. So when I check here, filter with the S3, it giving me multiple S3 access here. So what I want to do is I wanted to just grant read-only access to my uh, read-only user. So I went ahead and granted permission to read-only user. Let's go ahead and see what all things are there within this policy, right? Which I have attached to it. So if you see here, it's showing like S3 list and read. So what does it mean? It means it's able to list the bucket and it's able to show you that bucket name, right? And this is, remember I talked about how the policy document look like. So this is your effect, which is either allow or deny. This is your action, what action you wanted to do. And this is your resource. Just keep in mind, everything in Amazon, we call it ARN, Amazon resource name. So if you see here, right, this user also have that Amazon resource name. And let's go back to our S3. If I click here, I'm able to see this is like copy the ARN is Amazon resource name. It means everything has a resource name. Uh, so let me quickly show you that when I copied what I get here, new document. So see, this is the Amazon resource name for this bucket, which is your ARN S3. This is how it is built. So when I put asterisk here, what it means? It means I'm telling to all the resources. But let's say if I wanted to have only able to access to this particular bucket, I just do not want to grant access to all other things. We're going to learn on that next session, in a couple of minutes. So let's say we have a granted access here. We are good, right? And let me quickly go to Cognito. What was the AWS read-only user, right? So let's see if I'm able to access that S3 bucket or no. So I have granted access, so yes, I know the answer, will able to access it, but I wanted to show you. Okay, let's go and see if I'm able to see that particular bucket. Yep, see, I'm able to see bucket now. let me go and see if I'm able to go inside of. And let's try to upload something into this bucket. Let me see if it allow me to load into this bucket, right? So let's say if I let me put that credential to this bucket itself. Okay, load. So see here, this giving me an error. What is error? Your detail. So it means I'm not able to load the data is because I do not have an access. So what I need to do now, right? How I can able to load the data, and let's try to do that part. Let's go back to our console. So what I did is I have created a read-only. Now let me create a policy which allow me to have the data being loaded, right? So how I can do that is by creating a managed policy. And how I can do that is I'm going to here add and attach an existing policy, create a policy. And before even creating policy, let's go and see, okay, what all kind of policy we have. This custom manage, which is created by us, AWS Manage. Let's go ahead and create a policy. I think I have an example available. So there is a two way you can create a policy. One is like if you already have a language available, if you have already built it, you just put it here, or you can use the visual editor. Here, what we're going to do is S3, right? Selected the S3. What action I wanted to perform? I wanted to perform a write action access, right? So write access, which is fine. Let's say talk about resources. I wanted to work on all the resources, or I wanted to specify a particular resource, right? So uh, here I can do is I'm providing a just 1 second. I just do not go with all the right operation because it has a multiple thing. So let's go with the put object. Just it will allow you to put object within your bucket, and yeah. So put object is there, and yep. Here I'm just providing that bucket name. Bucket name. When I click here, this is let's say this is not our bucket. This is our bucket. This is here. This is your bucket name. Object name any, which is fine. Add review access. Okay. And what I'm saying is S3 write. Fairly simple. I have created this policy. So see, I have created a user-defined policy where I'm just telling to have one only access granted to that particular user. So what I will do is here, I will go ahead and I will assign this to this particular user, which is our read-only. So I will go ahead and what I did is I just took a filter. So this way I know this is the filter, and add permission. Perfect. So I have added the permission. Let's go back to our Cognito and see if I'm able to put the file within it. If not, then I don't know why. So here, right? Let me try to put some file. Perfect. See, I'm able to put this file into this particular bucket. Let's try to put the file into this bucket. Let's see if it allow me to put the file into this particular next bucket. Upload. Oh, I got an error. So can anyone tell me like why I'm getting this error?
Doesn't have the policy for uploading or writing a file onto this.
Perfect. Yeah, that's you're right. So when we have created this this user, right? I just have assigned, okay, this read, so he able to read all the bucket. But when I have to write, I have provided the particular bucket name. So you just go ahead and just write to this particular bucket, which clear that concept of read and write. So let's say I have created this policy. So I have assigned to 10 users. For this particular user, what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a policy which allow this user to delete as well. So this is very specific to this user. So that's where inline policy come into picture, right? You're defining, okay, you know what, dude, you can go ahead and maybe you're able to delete object. So here you're providing that specific, you're providing ARN. ARN is Amazon resource name, right? We talked about. Okay, this is fun. Yep, let me copy the bucket name and all the object. So add review policy, delete inline. When I create an inline policy, right? Let's see if I'm able to see this inline policy here. So there is nothing called inline policy. I mean this one, but anyways, let me see from anyways. So if you see here, there's nothing called inline policy available for that particular user. So what does it mean? It means like inline policy is only applicable to individual user, not to your not your it means it's not on that policy level or role level. So let's quickly go ahead and see one more thing, which is roles, right? Okay, that's awesome. So let's understand what his role is. IAM role are the secure way to grant permission to entities that you trust. Example, entity include file, an account, another account, which is awesome. Application codes running on EC2 instances. Remember I talked about that one. AWS services need an active resource in your account to provide features, which is awesome. I gave you the example of how you can have a role assigned to your Redshift just to copy data from S3 instead of having that role assigned to your individual user and user getting and copying the data. So it make your security. So how you can create the role. So let's go ahead and create a role. I wanted to create a role for let's say S3. Do we have S3 here? Yep. And I wanted to create role S3 here. What I want to do is I wanted to assign a S3 read only. What I did is S3 read only role and create role. Okay, now if I go to user, let's see if you can't assign roles to your user. You can assign roles to your services. So when you build any service, right? I will show you later when we started building the services, how you can assign a IAM role to it, and which allow you to perform kind of activity. Let's say quickly try to spin up this EC2 and see. So see here, there's an option for free tier only. So just select the free tier. I'm just selecting that IAM Amazon machine general purpose. So T2 micro, which is comes under the free tier, configure instance detail. And so see, this is IAM role. So what I'm telling here is create an IAM role for this EC2 is maybe EC2. S3 read only, or maybe S3 read only or S3 full access. So read only, let's say. So here review and EC2 S3 read only. Okay, refresh it. I should able to see it. So what I'm telling here is, if you able to do read only through this S3 machine, means if you're logging into this EC2 instance, you able to kind of you able to run a command or you able to access S3 bucket through this EC2 instance. Is it making sense? Is it like, okay, I'm invoking my services to access the other AWS resources by creating a role? Okay, that's the functionality of a role. Okay, let's come back to IAM here. And identity provider, create a provider, use a provider. So see, remember I talked to you about how you can do a federated query, federated login by creating identity provider. You can have either SAML and a provider name. When provided a SAML file, you can have it, or you can have an open IT connector where you're providing your server URL and able to do that. Yep, and I think let me check on the time. We already passed 7. So guys, I will take a pause here because there's a lot of things to cover within within AWS. So within IAM. So if someone is really interested around IAM, so the best thing around learning anything on AWS is just start with getting started with IAM, or maybe getting started with S3. So this is the best learning source you can find when you started working with any of the AWS services. uh, you know, go ahead and start doing on that learning started. IAM user guide. So you're going to IAM user guide. It will start from very basic, right? What is IAM, and then it has a multiple tutorial for you to go through it. And this is really awesome way to learn about any AWS services. And let me see if I have anything else to cover. Yep. And the last is so it's just a request. So if you like my videos, please donate some amount to nonprofit of your choice working for COVID-19, or you can donate to one of my friends nonprofit. And I know, because I'm asking this much and this thing a lot of time, because I see like she's really making an impact and she's working really hard, and any donation to her nonprofit will be really appreciated. So thank you. And I'm just stopping our sharing recording here. How I can do that?
Will you be sharing this recording?
Yeah, this recording will be available